Hello, dear students. Today we will cover the chapter Plant and Animal Tissues. The tissues present are actually nothing but a group of cells having similar structure and function. But they are different in plants and animals because the plants and animal cells are different. So let's study about these in detail. The plants have different structures, different functions. Some of them are colored plant parts. Some plant parts perform photosynthesis. Some plant parts are almost like dead tissue. Some plant parts have to attract insects for pollination. Some plant parts are adapted for storage of food and nutrients. So all plant parts have their own unique function. So depending upon their function, their structure is also different. The tissues present in them are also different. So the plant tissues are primarily divided into three different parts: the meristematic and the simple and complex permanent tissues. The meristematic tissue is that tissue which is made up of cells which are rapidly dividing and bringing about growth in the plant parts. The growth can be in root, in the shoot, in buds, in corners, in the diameters of a plant. The permanent tissues are of two types, simple and complex. Simple are made up of only one kind of cells. They have a unique structure suited for their function. They do not change their structure at all. Once their structure has been decided, they are not going to modify it. The complex permanent tissues, on the other hand, are those tissues which have a group of cells making them, and these group of cells have a definitive function. Some of them are assigned a particular role, like say let's some of them are for protection, some of them are for storage, some of them are for rigidity. So let's study the meristematic tissue now. The meristematic tissue is basically the tissue which is found in growing plant parts, whether it is shoot tip or root tip, or whether it is in between the two nodes. The node is basically a point where a leaf arises. So one node and the second node, the distance between them is called as internode. This length is increased by one kind of meristem, which is called as the intercalary. The one which is present at the shoot tip or root tip, it is called as the meristematic tissue of apical origin. And the third one is called as lateral. The lateral meristem is that which increases the diameter or the girth of a tree or of a plant stem. The plant stem becomes wider with advancing years. Each time a new layer of cells is added, this is because of meristematic tissue. Now, the meristematic tissue basically are cells which are very small, have no vacuole in them. Their nucleus is very big. They are almost cubical in shape. They have thin cell walls and they are rapidly dividing with no intercellular spaces between them. The next part which you need to do is called as the protective tissue. Now, the protective tissues are those which will protect a plant. For example, cork, the epidermis. Now, the cork is a layer of cells present above the hard woody layer of the tree trunk. The cork is waterproof. It protects a tree and the inner linings and the inner layers of cells from insects, from attack of pests. It makes it waterproof, protects it from extra air. The leaf epidermis is the layer above and below the cells present in the middle. This leaf epidermis makes the outer boundary, plus it secretes a waterproof layer called cuticle, which makes the leaf waterproof and protects it from any damage by the rain. The cork cells are used in making cork of certain bottles like champagne bottles and medicine bottles. So these protective layers protect the tree or the plant from external environment, insects, water, excessive rain, pathogens. Now, the permanent tissues are further divided into supporting tissues. The supporting tissues are the parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Now, parenchyma are cells which are almost having the same diameter, isodiametric cells. They have intercellular spaces with them, between them, and these parenchyma cells have a large vacuole. They are basically meant to store starch. So all starch is stored in the cells, in the plant cells, in parenchyma cells. If parenchyma cells have chlorophyll in them or they have chloroplasts in them, then parenchyma is called as chlorenchyma. The chlorenchyma is found in green structures of a plant. So all the leaves, they have chlorenchyma in them. Now, if parenchyma has a number of air spaces, as you can see here in the lotus stem, then that parenchyma is called as aerenchyma. It will provide buoyancy, the ability to float in water. This makes the parenchyma a very special tissue. So the first supporting tissue is parenchyma. Primary function is storage of starch. If chlorophyll is present or chloroplasts are present, it's called chlorenchyma. If air spaces are present, it's called aerenchyma. The next supporting tissue is called as collenchyma. Now, collenchyma cells are rather elongated with thickenings in the corner. These cells are also living like parenchyma, but these cells provide support and certain degree of strength to plant parts like the leaf petiole. When the wind blows, the leaf petiole may snap. To prevent it from snapping, it has to have certain amount of rigidity. This is provided by collenchyma. The last tissue which is supporting is a dead tissue called sclerenchyma. It has got thickenings on all sides, and the thickenings are made up of a chemical called lignin. Because of presence of lignin, the sclerenchyma cells are no longer living, but rather they are dead cells. Sclerenchyma is found in fibers like jute, hemp. All these fibers, they have coir, they have sclerenchyma cells. The sclerenchyma can be fibers, or it can be found in the hard shells of fruits and nuts. Like, for example, all these hard shells of walnut, the various kinds of fruits and nuts which we have, there the sclerenchyma has a special name. We call the sclerenchyma cells there as stones or sclerites. So stones and screeds are the sclerenchyma cells which are found in these pulp of or gritty masses of pear also, or hard shells of walnut, of apricot. All these seeds, they have their hard shell made up of sclerenchyma cells. The sclerenchyma is dead. Parenchyma and collenchyma, they are living tissues. The next comes the complex permanent tissue. So the complex permanent tissue is of two types primarily, xylem and phloem. The xylem is the tissue meant for upward movement of water and minerals from the soil to the plant parts. The phloem is the tissue meant for downward movement of prepared food from the leaves to the other plant parts, either for storage or for usage. So the xylem and phloem tissues, if we see them under a slide, the tissues which are very prominent and central, that's the xylem. The tissue on the sides here, here, and here. These tissues, which are relatively made up of smaller cells, are the phloem cells. The xylem cells are wider to allow rapid diffusion of water, rapid movement of water during ascent of sap, because the water has to move against gravity. So this movement is facilitated by the unique structures which are found in the xylem components. Now, the phloem, on the other hand, only has to allow the movement of substances downward towards gravity. So the phloem cells have got unique structures which will prevent any kind of a blockage to the movement of prepared food. So the xylem and the phloem, they are made up of four kinds of cells each. The xylem is made up of tracheids, vessels, parenchyma, and fibers. Of these, xylem fibers are dead, xylem parenchyma is living, the vessels and tracheids are also dead cells. The phloem, on the other hand, has only got the phloem fibers as dead, sieve tubes, companion cells, and phloem parenchyma are all living tissues. The phloem fibers and the xylem fibers are made up of sclerenchyma. The tubes, companion cells, and parenchyma are definitely parenchymatous in origin. They all have the function of storage or cell division or assisting the cells in performing their function. So the plant tissues are divided into two basic categories, meristematic and permanent. Meristematic is apical and lateral or intercalary, the three types of meristematic. The permanent is simple and complex. The simple is divided into the supporting type, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. The parenchyma are of two types, erenchyma and chlorenchyma, and the sclerenchyma is of two types, again, fibers and sclerenes. The complex permanent tissues are of two types, xylem and phloem. The xylem is divided into tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. The phloem is divided into sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fibers. So these are the various types of plant tissues. Hope you have understood it all. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.